Hey, this is Jared over at eCarrierCheck, and I want to talk to you about sales training today. I really want to key in on, you know, using your assets to what you can do, right? Some people like cold calling, some people don't. I really want you to be ready for, some ejections, and I want you to be in the right mindset. And, I'm a big believer in measuring failure and measuring success, right? and and even just discipline and holding yourself accountable. And so I want to talk to you about specifically, let's do some sales training together so that you and I can break down what it takes to grow your business. And the nice thing with today, with the 10 minutes that we're going to be here together, is I really want you to understand, yourself. I want you to understand what you're good at and how do we take advantage of that, and then maybe how do we tweak a few things so that you can continue to grow even if you are introverted, or even if you don't like cold calls, or even if you don't like sales. How do we transition that just a little bit so that you continue to grow your business? So let's talk through the sales channel and how I help develop an 8-figure brokerage. Okay, number one, you've got to choose the right mindset. All right. It doesn't matter what is going on around you, it doesn't matter what's going on at home. You've got to not allow yourself to be distracted. You can't allow yourself to be thinking of what am I having for dinner, or what is, going on with you, with something that's out of your control. You've got to control your mindset, and that can be done a couple different ways. Maybe, you start to listen to a podcast in the morning right before work, or maybe you listen to, a book that maybe allows you to start to think, okay, I need to grow my business. But I really want you to have the mindset prepared and ready, because a few things. First and foremost, you have to sound confident when you pick up that phone. When you pick this up and you start talking to shippers or carriers, whomever you're trying to build a relationship with, you've got to sound confident. Hi, my name is Jared with eCarrierCheck. Sounds a lot better than, hey, this is Jared with eCarrierCheck, right? So let's focus on having some confidence. Turn it on a little bit. Uh, and I'm not saying that you need to be fake. I'm not saying you don't need to be yourself. I'm saying just sound confident. I really want you to focus on mastering the art of a conversation and continue to learn that. So maybe that's pick up a book and read 20 pages a day, or maybe that's listen to a podcast or a YouTube show. But think about it from this standpoint. If you spend 10 minutes a day on understanding how to have better conversations, on understanding how people communicate, you're going to get better at these simple conversations that I'm suggesting that you have in order to grow your business. Okay? So, number one, let's work on your mindset. And you do that by training your brain and feeding it with good information, and making sure you are choosing to be positive, choosing to be ready for the day. All right? So get your mindset ready. Sometimes that takes exercise. Sometimes that changes just changing your state. And that could be just doing quick jump rope, 20 minutes in jump rope, whatever that may be. But change your state, be ready for a mindset change, and get ready to pick up that 800-pound phone on your desk and make it just a little bit lighter. And you can do that by having the right mindset. Okay. Number two is I really want you to understand what you're good at. Some people are really natural at picking up the phone and building a relationship with somebody. That's tough. It is. I'll be honest with you. I am more introverted at home than I am when I'm, at work, right? And so, I, sometimes picking up the phone or even starting a conversation can be more challenging than you want it to be. And so, how do we take advantage of that, or how do we work through that? Okay. Well, the guy that's watching this, if you're an extrovert and you're willing to, make those calls, good for you, man. That's or even the woman, good for both of you. Those are extremely rare traits. Not everybody likes to pick up the phone and make a cold call, right? But if you're on the other side of it, you're more operationally driven. You're more introverted. What do you do at that point? Well, I recommend work on other ways to communicate with shippers. Number one, maybe it's more emails or texts or social media campaigns, right? LinkedIn or Facebook, right? Number two, maybe instead of calling shippers all day, maybe you call carriers all day and develop relationships with those people that can move loads and find out, what do they need from a salesperson, right? And you may find you pick up a call, you call a carrier and say, hey, tell me what your cost per mile is, or what lanes do you like to run, or honestly, a lot of carriers don't have a sales guy. Maybe you ask them simply, what accounts would be of interest to you if I started to call, and they may give you just a handful of people that are right in his area that may make sense for his network, and it's just a matter of working that process just a little bit different. So if you're extrovert, obviously continue to call, continue to work on communication, right? But if you're introvert, maybe let's flip it. Let's call some carriers. Let's work on your networking. Let's work on the way you are communicating. There's other ways to communicate besides picking up the phone. Now, is this the easiest way? I believe it is. But I also understand that some people really struggle with just having a simple conversation. But if you work on your conversation skills with those carriers that you start calling, right? It'll be amazing how much more confident you'll get as you start to grow those relationships. So that's number 2, right? Number 3 is be ready for the call. Okay? So if we pick up the phone and you're used to having that conversation and saying, hey, can I speak with somebody in shipping? And you get to a shipping manager or logistics manager, and the typical aspect, well, we don't use brokers, or uh, we aren't adding anybody right now, or we don't control our own freight. Okay? I really want you to be prepared to answer those 3 things. That you're going to hear a lot of objections. They're going to all sort of sound like what I just said. Okay? And what's an objection sound like? So let's break this down. We don't use brokers. If somebody says that to you, what are you going to say? Well, here's what I would say. I completely understand that you don't use brokers. But what I was hoping I could do is just, if I could set up 10 minutes maybe next Thursday where we could talk about the benefits of using a broker and how we can just work through being an overflow carrier for you when possibly your assets may not have an option for you. And that's all I'm really looking for is just 10 minutes Thursday to do that. And so I always recommend acknowledging first that they're not adding one right now, or they're not using brokers, right? If you find that you're getting rejected enough, work on changing your value proposition just a little bit more. Okay. So once you get that objection, I really want you to acknowledge it and say, absolutely, I completely understand. And then transition into that little 5 second, hey, I really understand where you're going with this. What I'd like to do is just propose, 10 minutes this coming Thursday where we could talk about the trends that we're seeing from shippers, specifically trying to go from spot market to contract market. And you see where I'm going with that? Like, so think about what that wording sounds like, but be prepared to handle objections because they're going to come. Just acknowledge the objection and then have a power statement that follows. The ultimate goal with a cold call, in my personal opinion, is you really want to set up a meeting where you can formally talk to them. Okay? So if you can, get somebody on the phone, they don't give you any objections, and you can have sort of that conversation, then do it. But if they're a mid to bigger size shipper, my recommendation is trying to add as much value to them as possible. And that can sound like this, like it can say, hey, would you have 10 minutes Wednesday, as I'd like to talk about how I've utilized our negotiation skills and our contracts with current carriers that are in your area, and how we've taken them from the spot market to a contract market, and it's starting to save them money. Or I'm starting to find that with a little bit of flexibility from our shippers, we're able to utilize our contract carriers and able to communicate and be more successful against the spot market, right? So think about how you're kind of positioning yourself and how to handle some of those objections, and really start to build up, maybe 10 or 12 different phrases that you would say back when they say, well, we don't, you know, we don't control any of our freight. Okay, I completely understand, you know, and then you have your power statement. All right. And if you hit me up, I'm sure I probably can come up with 5 or 6 power statements for you. So just, I appreciate you. If you want to hit me up, I would be happy to talk through that with you. Um, the other side of things is just understanding the ultimate goal of a cold call isn't necessarily to talk to them then. It's to get a formal meeting, okay? So be ready for objections. Be ready with your action item. Your action item needs to be that if they're a small shipper and they're willing to talk and they're ready on the phone, talk now. Do it. Talk. But if you're looking to try to go away from chasing freight all the time and playing a spot market game constantly against 5 other brokers, if you're really trying to add value to that shipper, then in my opinion, you need to try to set up a more formal 10 to 15 minute meeting with them at a later time so that you can be more prepared, so that you can add more value to them, and so that you can say, okay, well, here's how I've done this, or here's what I've done with other shippers that's allowed them to have this outcome. And obviously, you're going to ask a lot of those questions when you get that 10 minutes with them to understand what outcomes are they looking for. How do you measure your brokers now? How do you measure your carriers now? Are you aware of this trend that we're seeing with, detention time? Or are you aware of these things that you're seeing in that particular industry? Okay. So think through it from that side of things. Be ready for objections, and then really create a value statement. I'm not saying have a script. I'm saying be prepared to say something that's more value driven than, hey, do you have any freight I can quote? Right? Differentiate yourself from others. The next thing I want you to do is measure your failures and successes. Every sales call, measure it. Get on the phone, think through each conversation. Okay? If you got stuck with a gatekeeper, what could I have said differently? Should I have called at a different time? Did I have any tonality in my voice? Is there, did I have voice reflections, or was I, hey, I'm looking for shipping, right? Or was it, hey, is there somebody in shipping that I can speak with, right? Or did you make small talk at the beginning and then was able to get into a shipping manager? Or did you ask for help from the front lady, the gatekeeper, the front desk there? But I really want you to think about and just measure your failures and your successes. I'm truly a believer in everybody that potentially is not winning is possibly just 10 degrees off course, right? So if we just adjust our compass just 10 degrees, what's that going to do to our navigational beacon? And I'll give you an example. The other day, I met with a freight broker, and he would always call and just say, hey, can I speak with somebody in shipping, right? And not having a lot of success, really wasn't working on his tone, wasn't working on small talk and having a conversation. He was just kind of, hey, can I speak with somebody in shipping? And just going through the motions. And so we talked about, okay, how do we change him just 10 degrees, right? And that 10 degrees sounded like this. I said, because he was calling pipe companies. He was calling a lot of different pipe companies. And he really does more partial flatbed pipe stuff, right? Just does LTL flatbed pipe stuff. And so I said, well, let's change you 10 degrees and see if we can get that. And so then his sales call sounded like this. It sounded like, hey, this is Jared over to eCarrierCheck. I move a lot of partial flatbed loads with other pipe companies that are right in your town. And I'd like to see if there's a possibility where I could possibly move freight for you as well, because it could help lower, my costs, which could then in turn lower your costs. And I'd like to see if there's a good fit between us, right? And so he started to change his calling a little bit, just that 10 degree in word change, or that 10 degree in that little bit of change in his email. And I just touched base with him this morning, and it was interesting. He actually got three people to say, "Well, yeah, you're moving stuff in our town." Okay, it kind of intrigued him, right? And then, is every pipe company shipping out partial pipe? No, they don't want to sell it that way, but they have that need, and so just that little 10-degree change actually got him a new account. And it's one of those things that I'm truly a believer. If you're just missing it, find your 10 degrees. Find your, all right, what could I change? Think about it from that. What's your 10 degrees that you could change? Okay. And last but certainly not least, I, I talk to a lot of brokers that they're good at making a prospect list. They use obviously eCarrierCheck to go through our database. Our sales database is over 700,000 shippers, um, and so they're making all these prospecting lists, and they're sending out emails, and there's nothing wrong with that. I recommend sending out emails. Usually, what I recommend is making a phone call, leaving a voicemail that says I'm going to send an email, and follow up with that, right? So that you're kind of hitting that aspect of two forms or two pillars in communicating to those people, right? But what I really want you to do is, a lot of these people are good at getting their pipelines and their prospect sheets. They just struggle picking up the phone. You have to take action. And I know earlier we talked about, those people that may be introverted, but I'm still thinking you need to pick up the phone and talk to those carriers, right? And start to build your confidence. So you got to do the work. You got to stay disciplined. You got to make a minimum of 5 calls a day to continue to grow your network. And that could be because you need more carriers, because you have more shippers than you can handle their freight and are not able to source capacity. So maybe you need to call carriers. Or you're on the other side of things, you don't have any shippers and you need more of those. You have to stay disciplined and you've got to make those calls. Because I promise you, if there's 20 working days in a month and you're making 5 calls a day, by the end of that month, something's going to stick. And if you're measuring your processes, you'll be able to see if you need to sway 10 degrees, just a little bit, right? So take the time to make those calls. Stay disciplined, and that can be through utilizing your email calendar. That can be through setting a task functionality on your cell phone. I've seen both. I just want you to stay disciplined. Make those calls in the morning. I think your best bet is to make cold calls between 8:30 in the morning and 11:30 in the morning, and really hone in on that 3-hour window and take advantage of every bit of that time that you can. Okay, guys, hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. I appreciate all of your time. If you want to be on a demo, we do them on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. And I really appreciate everybody taking the time. Thanks for everything, and have a great day.